Okay, we have this idea that incorporation, you probably have never heard of incorporating. What it does is it basically, according to the documentary, The Corporation, it basically attributes to a commercial entity like a company the idea that it's an individual, that it has rights like a civilian, but it doesn't have a conscience. So it's like a psychopath. And that is that it's going to do, and its god is money, greed. Okay, so people who run corporations have a fiduciary responsibility to their creditors to make as much money as possible, to always be making money, and not raising the cost of things above the profit. So you're always making a profit, or you're always making ends meet, but you're never going below that. So even whenever you do charitable works, you do them to the ends of trying to make profit still. And so the problem with that is that the money god, it's got money as its god. If you're a Christian and you run a corporation, keep in mind that you've created an entity that represents a person, has no conscience, and its god is money, as defined legally by our government, by our constitution, or whatever laws that we put in place. This is how it's defined. So you've created a non-Christian entity. Your corporation is a non-Christian entity. It doesn't matter what your vision statement is. It doesn't matter what your business plan is. That may define the soul of that corporation, but it can get changed at any time, and it's all a matter of who is holding the controlling stock of that corporation. When a corporation fails, say it goes bankrupt and it's not able to make the money back, who's to blame? Nobody. I mean, they can go after individuals, but the people who own stocks in that corporation, they just lose their money, but they don't go to jail, do they? That's the problem with our country. And how will God treat this? Well, we may be able to get rid of COVID, but COVID might kill off creditors. It might cause financial instability. The corporations will fail. The corporations that should fail, that have worked without a conscience, should fail. And that's probably what God will do. God willing, that's what will happen. If that doesn't happen, it could be the end for America. God will hand America over to its foes, China, say, and we undergo 40 years of torture and turmoil in the hands of the Chinese government, or in the hands of the Russian government, or in the hands of somebody else. Maybe the Europeans decide to take America over. Maybe the Germany, say, has controlling stock in all the corporations that are in America, and causes them to leave America. That would be something akin to what Ayn Rand said about in Atlas Shrugged, is that all the corporations leave America and America becomes like a third world entity. And then everybody in America doesn't want to be here anymore. They leave for other countries, like Germany, try to become German citizens, try to become French, British. America just comes to nothing. And why should that happen? Well, maybe because they're mining all of our resources here, and all those resources get mined out. All the coal gets taken, all the oil gets taken, all the lithium gets taken. They pretty much have completely mined us out. What's left? And I mean, we don't really have the jobs here anymore. All of our jobs now are mainly people who think, lawyers and scientists and things like that. But they're going to be the first people to go if America falls under. Who's going to be left? The people who don't have any skills, no skill set. And, that's terrible. But that's the idea. You would hope that it wouldn't be the case. Maybe it won't be torture. Maybe something else will happen. But the thing is that these corporations that we created, these entities, and corporations haven't been around forever. Um, Incorporating the corporate entities that we've created of this century and the previous century, it kind of came about in the late 1800s that the corporation, the idea of an entity that's got creditors but nobody to point at and say it's your fault, and when things fail and it goes bankrupt. I mean, they may bring a CEO in to save the company, and it may fail, but it's not the CEO's fault, and he leaves with a good with a pension plan, with severance and all that stuff. And the reason why CEOs take a large cut and why they have a large severance is because if that company fails, it's going to be less likely somebody's going to want them to control their company. Okay. So they take a risk in every job they take. They take a risk of the company failing, and the people that to rise to the top are the ones that have been successful with leading other organizations. Their chief executive officers, for a reason, is that they execute, they make choices, they try to make really gut wrenching choices on what that company is to do. The whole purpose of incorporating was really just to permit, because 9 out of 10 companies fail, it was to permit the constant creation of companies until one succeeded. And people put money into each one of these. And we have a free market economy, and the idea of a free market is that if anybody gives out bad products, then they be damned. They will lose money, people will stop using them, and they'll fail. That's what's supposed to happen. Tell that to Ben Bernanke. Tell that to what's his Paulson. Tell that to Paulson, because Paulson believed in a free market economy until he had to put money into the banks to keep them from failing. Of course, we say Paulson was helping his friends, but how much is $10 billion to a bank? It's very little, actually. In America, if you took $10 billion and you gave it to all the Americans, that would amount to about, it's like dividing by a third. So it'd be like $30 in everybody's pocket. It's not a whole lot. So if everybody who was associated with the Bank of America, were to get an account and put in $30, that was like giving that bank $10 billion. It was temporary money. Everybody gave them $30. They had that temporary money. Then they'd go and they'd invest in stock. They'd get something off of that stock, and then they would return the money, and they would be able to work off of the capital they created. That was the idea. It was a way of boot starting them again. It was like going to somebody's car and putting on one of those new lithium batteries that let you start your car instantly, rather than having to pull out the cables and start it off of somebody else's car. You know, it was to get the banks going again, because they were going to fail. And so what they would do is they claim bankruptcy, and then they would come out of the ashes and then be able to maybe pay back the creditors, get a second chance at it. But they don't give a second chance to the people that get credit cards. They're charging them these outlandish fees, and that should be illegal. But our government doesn't do anything about it, because these companies are so big that they can lobby our government and get stuff into our laws that give them special treatment. The government's not permitted to compete with private industry, and that's because Private industry is what brings in the dollars that pays the government to be able to support, to give us better roads and better public services that will support people when they fail. Even the owned companies, when their companies go bankrupt and they let go of people, those people end up on the streets. They end up homeless because they're not able to pay all their bills. I mean, Trump could very well end up on the street because he was 100 million in debt when he was our president. He didn't want to reveal that because he wanted to keep on persisting the idea that he was rich, and he wasn't. He was in debt. He's been in trouble before. His wife once took all the money from him, and he got out of that. He went off and did talks and sold water. He went and probably about the time that happened, he probably released his book, The Art of Making a Deal, or The Art of the Deal. He got something in that book. Some news organization, some documentary from Frontline claimed that in the book he had something in there called truthful hyperbole, and that was the idea of telling a lie just to make somebody feel good. And an example of that was that supposedly Trump Towers, all the floors start at 10 rather than starting at 1. That's so that the person on the first floor can tell their friend that they live on the 10th floor rather than on the first floor. It makes them feel a little bit better about themselves because they don't have to disclose to their friend they're on the first floor. Or it gives them that option to choose which floor they're actually living on. That's almost like whenever somebody says I was a vice president of a company. Um, if my brother was the vice president of a big banking company, but there were 1,000 vice presidents. It's a crap name that doesn't mean anything. It's like a little thing that they can put on somebody's that they can give out to employees. They can give as many vice president um, titles to as many people as they want in a company. They could have 10,000 vice presidents and have a president, okay? So vice president doesn't mean anything. VP of marketing, VP of sales, VP of this particular section of the company. And so those are, and what I said about my brother is true. He got to be vice president of I think it was called American Bank or something like that, or United Bank or something. It was some really big bank, and he was a bank lawyer, and so they gave him vice president title, and he told me it doesn't mean anything. They don't give any monetary incentive on top of that. It's just a title that ends up on your resume and looks good next time you want to go and get another job. But someone who's a CEO or a president of a company, they're going to be well known in the public. And when that company fails, what kind of jobs can they get? Not very much, because everybody knows they failed. And so that's the reason why they take these tremendous severances and have these crazy pension programs. When Merrill Lynch failed, I think his name was Jonathan Thane, the guy they brought in to replace the CEO to try to figure out how to sell all these toxic assets that Merrill Lynch had. And he went around and he found the one guy that would be gullible enough to do it, to buy up Merrill Lynch, and that was the guy who was a president, or I mean, he was either CEO or president of Bank of America. And the only reason why I know this is because I saw a Frontline documentary called Breaking the Banks. I think that was the one. And this guy, this president of Bank of America, according to the documentary, said that he had practiced a long time to smile, to make sure to smile, because it was going to improve the likelihood that people were going to get him, or that he's going to be able to sign a deal with confidence, and so that people would have confidence in him because he's smiling. Obviously, there's something going on right with him, and it's really just a facade. And he sought after Merrill Lynch like it was some sort of prize, like it was a trophy. And Jonathan Thane knew this, um, or Thane, I don't know what his first name is. He knew that he seduced the head of Bank of America into buying Merrill Lynch up. And the head of Bank of America was saying, "Oh wow, wouldn't it be great if Bank of America had bought up Merrill Lynch? That's like the tops of the financial investment industry." Well, the thing is that banks are not supposed to buy up investment brokerages because it's very risky, and it was very risky. It cut the total value of Bank of America in half. It cut its stock in half because it was so risky. What he brought in were a lot of toxic assets. All these stocks that all these what they were stocks that well, some of it was debt from, or probably all of it was debt from mortgages that were given. Mortgage loans that were given to people who didn't have a a good credit history. That means that they didn't pay their credit card bills. They had outstanding debt, and they were given another loan, which they wouldn't be able to pay off. And the loan officers who made these loans, they they got someone to A-rate the loans, and those people faked the signatures to the A rating of those loans. So the officers that were supposed to A-rate the loans, determined the credit history of the people who were getting the loans, were faking it. And so basically what the loan officers were doing, because they would make a certain amount of money based upon the loans that they handed out, they were handing out loans to everybody so they could make a lot of money, and dishonestly A-rating the loans with an organization that was faking the signatures. And then the banks would buy up these A-rated loans thinking that they would pay out well, and the data that they were using to project their earnings were based on old, it was like 90s based loans that were given out and how people were doing in the 90s. But this was after the big burst, or the bubble of the dot-coms, where people were throwing money at the dot-coms hoping that they'd make money back, then they didn't make anything, So you're talking about a whole country that's full of people that were in debt, and these banks are buying the debt of people who were in debt. And so what happens to banks? They could go into debt. And what would happen to the country? We would have another depression or a recession, or, so the thing is that people wouldn't be able to, it'd be like the Dust Bowl era. And what would fix that? Well, the last time that happened, how was it fixed? Everybody came together and united over the World War II, and they started industry again. And so maybe COVID is our World War II, after having had this stuff happen with the bursting of the bubble, the dot-com bubble, and then all the junk that happened after that, of all these people probably eager to pay back debt that they had, getting into yet other bubbles. Okay. So it started domino effect. It's going to fix some stuff, hopefully, because we can't continue to have this country working the way it is now. And probably where that's going to go is by fixing the laws, fixing some of the problems we've got, like the revolving door and the fact that rich people nominate the people we vote for. Those two things need to be fixed. The incorporation, the creating of corporations need to have addendums to them. things need to be added and changed in those so that the corporations should fail whenever they have toxic assets or something. Whenever it's obvious that they've got a lot of debt and they're not paying it back, they need to be somehow helped or taken over. Say the government takes over a private institution, should their credit go south. The creditors still hold the stock. It's just that some other company comes in and takes over operations, you know, or relinquishes all the stuff because what they've got, what was invested in was nothing. Like it might be another Bernie Madoff. But we need to have things done big time, and we need to go through all of our laws and things and rejudge all of these laws, you know, try to make sense of them because they've gone out of hand. And if we don't, we're going to be handed over to our foes. We're going to be handed over to the people that we most fear. And what does that do? It brings us in contact with other people that are not like us. And usually the outcome of that, if we're good about it, is we create a new nation that is going to seek truth and is going to seek a way of doing things right. People keep telling me this is hell. No, it's not hell. Hell is eternal torture without any resolution. No, this is earth. And we can make changes and we can fix things. In hell, you can't fix anything because there is no resolution. There's nothing you can do to resolve anything. You don't have any control. And I don't have any control over this. But this isn't hell.